it's me, Suzanne Titkemeyer, writer for Pathos, no longer quivering for almost 10 years, and working no longer quivering a few years before that, and now just doing my own thing. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff tonight, but first I've got to show you the most awesome thing ever to come out of Costa Rican cuisine so that you guys get a huge laugh out of this. I've been talking about this all week. Coffee flakes. Coffee flakes. These are cornflakes coated with coffee. And that's why I'm wired still, because I had a huge bowl of them this morning, and on top of my regular coffee, it might have been a little bit of coffee too far. I don't recommend feeding the milk to the cats because it turns into a latte. It's delicious. Do lots more stupid things a lot faster. Eat your McCallum's coffee flakes. I love those things, and unfortunately, they can't be gotten in the States. I'm going to have to bring friends of mine boxes of that back. Okay, I wanted to start with a little light-hearted, not lightheaded. Does that tell you how tired I am? I spent the day going to Liberia, taking a friend of ours around and showing him where PriceSmart was, taking him around to that. We showed him where the Do It Center is, all of the things you need to make your time in Costa Rica living here pleasurable, or at least not as stressful. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. These families, hey, Amanda, these families that are exploiting their children. And I cannot help but start out with the Longs, because so many people have asked me my thoughts on the Sophie, Michael, Kelly Long situation. Okay, I'm just going to confess right now, I haven't really kept up with it. The only thing that I've really kept up with is that the child, I saw the video where she accused her stepfather, her mother's boyfriend, I don't know if they're married or not, of harming her. Hey, always grateful. And because I am the way I am, and my work experiences and everything, I say you always believe the child. When you have a 9-year-old child that is crying like that, you have to believe the child, at least until there's a firm investigation. Now, I've been told that Michael ran off with the girl to Mexico. Hey, Jan. And I don't know. I haven't kept up. The only thing I've kept up besides knowing the initial situation, I heard that the stepfather does have some sort of police record. The girl has been found that is with a foster family, and Michael is in jail. My only thoughts on it are believe the child. When a child talks about it, about what's going on, like she did, as young as she was, you believe the child, particularly the heart-wrenching screaming she was doing. And if you see somebody who tacitly declares that that child is a brat, just no, don't have anything further to do with that person. Don't listen to anything they're saying. I know that someone without a box of Kleenex called her a brat, but that little girl was not a brat. That was a heart cry, like you're saying, heart-wrenching cry. Hey, small town Jewel. And that's what was going on there. And that kind of leads me off to what I really want to talk about tonight. These people that are exploiting their children for dollars, Dugging for dollars, as I've called it before. Not just the Duggars, the Bates are doing it. What was the name of the family where the kids are all blonde? And I watched one episode and just said, oh no. Olivia is the daughter-in-law, I think it is. And I wish I could remember her name because I'm on several Facebook groups with her. These people that use their children to exploit them for dollars are just really reprehensible. I'd like to see the entertainment industry just completely stop signing off on this stuff, particularly when you have things happen. The Plaths, thank you so much. Always grateful. And small town Jewel, I would like to see Hollywood not use these kids, not exploit them, not let people be rewarded for massive reproduction by giving all these people with these freakishly large families a platform to exploit the children. When I heard that the Duggars did not have to even follow the Jackie Coogan rule, and there was no type of anything offered for their children as far as like working hours, any of that, because they were listing the family kids as volunteers. They were exploiting them for dollars, and they certainly did get quite a bit. I think I was reading somewhere that it was like $40,000 an episode. Welcome to Plathville. Yeah, I watched one episode and I was just like, I cannot deal with that Kim Blath. I was going to start punching the television. I was going to start calling on demonic forces and the heavenlies to smite that woman, because she was between Kim and Barry. They were just so unbelievably creepy. And I have noticed that with some of these families, the affect of the children is all wrong. You could just tell they're hyper controlled in a way that no child should ever have to put up with in their childhood. Children need to be believed. They need to be respected. They don't need to be exploited for dollars. And if you do happen to hire a child actor or use a child in an entertainment field, they need to be kept to those small hours that children are allowed to work. The schooling must be overseen. What money is paid should be paid into a Jackie Coogan kind of fund for the kids that the parents cannot touch. My understanding of Here Comes Honey Boo Boo is that TLC did that. They made the mother's name. I can't think of the mother's name. I can see her face. They made Honey Boo Boo's mama, June, set up these Jackie Coogan accounts for all the girls in the family and put what they paid towards it. TLC did that. They forced this. Why didn't TLC do this with the Duggars? Well, I can tell you one reason why. They're looking down upon Mama June and Sugar Bear as some kind of shiftless white trash, and they're treating them like that. They're treating them like the kind of people that have to be forced to do these things. Well, because the Duggars have self-stated evangelical religion, they're not doing the same to them. They're allowing, yes, June Shannon, they are allowing, at the end of their time, that's why Jim Bob rebranded with Counting on Disgusting. $250,000 an episode. That's crazy. That's crazy money. So they let Jim Bob get away with his little scams of volunteering his children rather than having Coogan accounts like most other things. And if you don't know who Jackie Coogan is, he was an early child actor in Hollywood whose parents kept telling him they were putting his wages away for when he was 18. Can you guess what happened when he turned 18? He wanted his money that he earned, that he worked so hard for. And you know what they told him? There was none. They'd spent it all. His parents had spent his entire wages, his wages that he had worked so hard for, that was supposed to be bank. Hey, Claire Bear. Yeah, I'm happy Monday. Happy Monday, M. Levy. Sorry. Oh, 80,000, 250K per season. That is just crazy still, Amanda. I still think that's nuts. And they weren't paying the adult daughters who were participating in this. Their money was going into Jim Bob's pocket. And those girls are married, some of them, and should have been making wages. You know, I don't blame Derek Dillard one bit for being upset about that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that everything Jim Bob does is monetarily motivated. I had to laugh because this afternoon on Reddit, on Duggar Snark, one of the guys who was a bodyguard of Josh's after the news broke in 2015 about Josh and his sisters, he did a Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything, and they verified who he was. And he has been spilling the beans. And one of the big beans that he spilled was that Jim Bob does all of this, does nothing except for money. And he's the only one getting paid. And that the creep vibes coming off of Josh were obvious. even to this guy who didn't even know him. It was absolutely disgusting for parents to do that to their children. Amanda, not only disgusting for them to do it to their children. Yeah, the bodyguard story is insane. When he told the story of taking one of Josh's kids to Texas to go to the ER to avoid CPS, who'd already been sniffing around apparently around Josh's shoulder, and there had been other reports. And I was pretty sure of that just because of the fact that they're charging Jana. I think it's going to come out. There's probably a pile of reports. And because there was a pile of CPS and neglect reports, I'm pretty sure, well, I believe, this is my theory, I believe that Jim Bob had Jana fall on her sword and cop to this, whether it was her or not. I don't know if it was her. I just don't know. Jackie Coogan was a pioneer in establishing childhood wages in the industry. Then I think the young man from Father Knows Best took on the cause. Yes, they took on the cause because their parents had exploited their earnings and had done away with them. So the Duggar family, and they're hardly the only ones, have been able to get around that by using their children as volunteers, and Papa has a brand new bag. Papa's the only one getting paid, the only one making the money, such that is by volunteering their children. By volunteering them, there are no restrictions on their hours because they're homeschooled. Nobody's checking up on if they're actually doing schooling. The bodyguard said there was no schooling done as far as he saw. There was no homeschooling any of the times he was around. In a storm, no less. No wonder John David is separated as much as possible from his family. Hey, do good letters. So, yeah, John David has, and I wondered what that was about. Well, if he had to take a small child multi-states away through a thunderstorm, through a bad storm, I don't blame him one bit. Jim Bob must have some amazing rose-colored glasses on. First, 2 children arrested, one for CSAM and one for child neglect. Not Jana's fault, though, for being forced to babysit. Exactly. No, yeah, she was forced to do all that. And I don't quite, well, I do quite get it. She is the oldest one. And in Quiverful, the oldest daughter is always responsible for a lot of the younger siblings. And we saw that many times in the Duggar specials where Michelle explained how the buddy system, how each person had their little buddy. And some of those older girls had multiple buddies. So that's what we're seeing coming out now. I don't know if you all remember when Without a Box of Kleenex and other ones took after, oh, I can't even remember the name of that family. I'm losing it. It's been a long day and I've been in the car all day. But I've also been in the car all day thinking about this crap. The family that had to rehome the little boy, the family bloggers, they had a YouTube channel that were getting mega hits, mega dollars. Hey, Debbie Smith. Hey, CJ. The family had to rehome the little boy. It was just too much for them. The Staffers, Micah Staffer, I can't pronounce their names. She was pretty much almost harassing that family and saying all kinds of stuff about, well, how horrible it was. It was the worst thing ever. I don't think that's the worst thing ever. You know what I think? Huxley, yeah. It's a crime within itself. I absolutely agree that name. Micah Staffer. It was really bad what they did to that boy, rehoming him. But there are some circumstances where that's actually appropriate, particularly if you got a child that has reactive attachment disorder and you're not qualified to deal with them. One thing I can say for sure from my time at the residential treatment center, we had a ton of kids from failed evangelical adoptions that had reactive attachment disorder as a primary diagnosis. Those poor kids. It was just a tragic thing. And it's a tragedy all the way around. What I blame the Stauffer family for doing is the same thing I'm going to blame this other family for. I've missed the beach. I've got a couple other ones. I was talking about Sophie, and basically what I said is the only thing that everybody keeps asking my opinion. My opinion is you always believe the kids when they're that young and they're saying what happened to them. So I believe her. I believe her hollering and carrying on, and I believe every bit of it. And I believe calling her a brat was awful. There's a lot going on with her. With her father is in a Mexican jail, and apparently she is in foster care, which is not necessarily a bad solution for her because it seems like her mother and the boyfriend or husband, whatever he is, are not a good fit. My understanding is all the kids in that family have now been removed and are the third party who's unrelated to the entire thing. So that's what I'm saying. Believe the kid, believe the kid, believe the kid. Pay no attention to the ridiculous adults surrounding the kid and hope the kid gets help. Their treatment of him was horrific too. As bad as Rehoming is, I hope he's better off now. Amanda, I think the same thing because so many of these rehoming situations are so awful. And trust me, I've heard the stories. I have a girlfriend that she did foster care for years and years and years for a private foster care agency in Northern Virginia. And a lot of the kids that she took in, one of the worst ones she took in, the little girl had been sexually abused by her own father. It was awful. And she had reactive attachment disorder because of all the things that happened to her early childhood before the family even got her. And she had gone to a family of U.S. diplomats, and they finally rehomed her. They kept her in a private school in Jamaica for as long as they could. And then they tried to rehome her, and then the foster care system snatched her up, and she ended up with my friend for 7 years. It's just a no-win. I don't think mom or dad are fit. Yeah, I don't think they are either, CJ. From everything I'm saying, I think they would be much better off in good therapeutic foster homes. And there are therapeutic foster homes out there. And if they can't find a good therapeutic foster home, then there are those good therapeutic facilities too. And I know that the chain that I was working with, the group that I was working with, they have a facility in Texas that could easily take in that little girl and her brothers and treat them. I left the message to be sure Josh didn't hurt Sarah's campaign. She was the guest of the church. I was there to visit some old friends. Ooh. Fully. So I hope they all get. But the Stauffers, whoever, here's the thing. I was watching a few minutes of, I guess it's the Dad podcast. Those guys, that guy, I had never seen him before, but he was talking about the Sophie Long brat situation. Like I said, I knew some about it, but I didn't know much about where Sophie had ended up or any of that. So he made a really good point. No one on YouTube should be using their children as fodder for their channel. No one. Allow your kids to be kids out of the glare of the spotlight. You know, it's one thing these older people, 18 on up, are getting in front of these stupid ring lights and are ranting on our computers. That's one thing. We're all old enough to know better. But please don't make your children into fodder to make money for you. Please, please don't. Sophie's brothers were removed a while back, from my understanding. I hope they are together, and I hope Sophie gets all the help she needs now. Poor baby. Amanda, I hope so too. I hope all those kids in that family get the good therapy that they need to move behind all this. Putting your kids online is a total pedo bait. Well, I didn't want to go there with it, but you were right. That's exactly what it is. I mean, we look at, there's the Collins family, for example. She is constantly posting on Instagram, YouTube, whatever about her kids 24/7, and it looks like oh shoot, what's the name of that movie? It looks almost like a situation where a survivalist kind of situation, a survivor of the fittest kind of situation, Lord of the Flies with those kids, because it doesn't look like everything she's posting. There's much childcare going on. There's much education going on. There's not much of anything like that going on. It looks almost like a feral child situation from everything she's posting. But she is hardly the only one. These are just the religious ones I'm talking about. This morning, when I was busy inhaling my coffee flakes, most exciting cereal on the planet, not sure I should buy it because I'm not sure they're giving me tons of coffee more than I have. I'm not a mother, so it's hard to keep your kids offline these days. Just scary, even as an adult. Emily Levy, I've just got to say, it's hard, but guess what? It is doable. We had to do it with our kids. Our kids came up in late 90s, early 2000s with computers, the whole 9 yards. And the only way to do it is to be proactive with what your kids are interacting with, to have strict internet times, to have filters on. That's the only real way to do it. Jana's worth $400,000, I heard today. Ooh. It's hard to you still try to do it. Actually, one of my few first forays into the news was my daughter, when she was in middle school, ran across somebody's Zanga blog. Do you remember Zanga? Zanga, Diaryland, what was the other one? Live Journal that everybody did. That's how far back it was. And the Zanga journal, the little girl had listed 200 people at their school she didn't like. And it just said, I can't stand these people. It didn't say anything more than that. I don't even think it used the word hate. But there were 200 people's listed on that. And my daughter showed me that little girl's posting was a girl she knew on Zanga and said, oh, look at this. It's terrible. I can't remember if she was 12 or 13. And I looked at it and said, stay out of that. That little girl is entitled to her opinion. If she doesn't like those people, she's entitled to it. Stay out of it. Don't show anybody else this. Don't direct your friends there. Don't do anything. Well, what I hear, reality TV kids aren't protected by labor laws. They're not. That's what I was just talking about, CJ. They're not. So what ended up happening was my daughter, in her infinite lack of wisdom at that time, made a copy of the list and brought it to school. Hey, Tiny Dancer. And she showed the list to the school. She showed the list to a girlfriend of hers who was at the high school, who said, hey, can I borrow this for a half hour or whatever? And she took and photocopied the list and handed it out to every other kid that was on that list. And what happened was kids started screaming that they were going to be shot in school and all kinds of things. And this was back when school shootings had started to really happen quite a lot, but they weren't every day like we're seeing now. So the school actually behaved very poorly with the thing. They started pulling in the kids that were actually on the list and accusing them of writing the list. And it got ugly. The police got called. My daughter got called in. I had to go to the school. It was bad because that was the same day my husband was having surgery for his parathyroid gland. So I wasn't even reachable. I was at the hospital all day. And by the time I found out about it, it was bad. And they shut down the school and the whole everything. Yes, I read that Josh was watching PORN while he was driving. That has got to be one of the worst things I've heard about him. A small town where everyone knows him and everyone can see. So this little mean girl list spiraled into, oh my gosh, we're going to get killed. and kids calling their parents in a panic saying that they were on this list to be targeted and killed. And it just kept spiraling. That night, the local news station called me and asked for a quote over this thing. And I pretty much let them have it. I said, this is on parents to do internet security on their kids, blah, blah, blah. This was not a kill list. I don't know how that got blown out of proportion. In our tiny Virginia town, where everybody automatically thinks the worst of every single little thing going on and invents stuff, that's what happened. And it was pretty crazy because I ended up going on Bill O'Reilly's show to talk about this, and in the Washington Post and a couple of the DC area news stations where I was talking about it's on the parents to observe what your child is looking at and to take appropriate action. That I told my daughter to stay out of it, and she did not, and now she was traumatized. It was one of the most awful things we've ever experienced. And it left a mark on my daughter, but that was how we were introduced to extreme internet safety after having done quite a bit of internet safety with the kids. So I didn't have kids that were wanting to spill every thought online because they had been through so much with this stupid. My son was called in and he had nothing to do with it at all. So to find these families like the Collins that are doing this is just like, Shayna Lee, I'm not ending it. I'm ranting tonight. I'm mad. And this was before the days of Obama family blogging. That was very telling. Yeah, it was. Most definitely. So long story short, those two kids learned. And I just basically said, this is terrible, but you learn a lesson because you really can't. How did a certain Boston clinics get big networks to say Katie Joy broke the story like Newsmax today? I'm not really sure. I think she probably pestered the FUCK out of them, would be my guess. She's got that lawyer with all of his form letters. Maybe he sent all the stations a form letter saying, we're going to sue if you don't say Katie Joy broke the story. I don't know. I wasn't around all day. I was shopping. I was taking somebody around showing them. So what started all this ranting for me about all these people and their crazy usage of their kids? The McMoversons. Someone on one of the Tamarindo lists posted a video by this family called themselves the McMoversons getting sprayed by a skunk in Tamarindo that was nosing through their trash. This is a pretty rural area where we're living, Tamarindo. Best beaches in the world, but rural farmland. I've talked about this before. I got a cow caught in my yard a couple of weeks ago. It just happens. It's a rural. It is what it is. It's a very rural area, and anybody back up. And the poor skunk did this like 5 or 6 times, and this squirted these people. And I would normally laugh over something like that. This time I was like, Jesus Christ, how stupid can you get? So I started looking at their YouTube channel after they popped up on the Tamarindo rumors list. They moved to Tamarindo 3 days ago. 3 or 4 days ago. So I went and looked at their video, and their brand is they move every now and then. They move from Vancouver, Canada to Costa Rica. And I could tell you from the things they were saying and the things they were doing in their video, they're exploiting their children. Maybe they're not exploiting their children to the same level that the Duggars or Mrs. Collins does, or even the Stoffers, but there is some child exploitation going there. She showed her kids doing all kinds of crazy things that I was just going, yeah, skunk is the worst smell in the world. That's why you pay attention when the skunk starts showing you he's going to squirt you. I I was raised primarily in a suburban area, but I spent enough time at family farms through the years to know that when a skunk starts making his stamping with his feet, back the hell away very quickly. And you know what happens if you get squirted by a skunk? It's bad. I've had cats that have gotten squirted with skunks. You know who's on the cover of People this month? Debbie, I'm not really sure. I didn't pay any attention. I can't see People magazine from here. The site is even blocked. So it doesn't even figure into anything I'm talking about here ever. So these people got squirted by skunks. So then I started watching their moving to Costa Rica video. And I just so many times was slapping myself in the head going, WTF? And not just because the kids were jumping on this and touching every piece of luggage that went by and doing that and doing this. And the fact that they flew from Vancouver to San Francisco to Los Angeles to Houston to Liberia, which is the world's longest jaunt. I'm not sure why they took that flight. They could have done a much quicker and more direct flight. They said, oh, well, we made the reservations way in advance. Well, they just spread so much misinformation about moving to Costa Rica. It was kind of silly. So I'm going to bust their bubble tonight, their Costa Rica bubble. And I'm going to warn all of y'all, if you're even thinking about an international move, I want to talk about the realities of international move to here with children. And you're exploiting your children by putting them on your videos front and center and exploiting them. And let me tell you, I know of at least one pedo in this community, at least one. So there is one here, and he may well be watching these people's videos for their kids. So that's what my objections to these people doing these videos like this and starring their kids. Hit by a skunk. They did adopt that extra child, Debbie. I saw they did. They're not legal guardians. They adopted that child. They very quietly adopted him. So he's probably getting some type of Medicare or something, Medicaid, because they do. There's entitlements for people who are adopting too, for some of that stuff. They should be. Problem solved. But like I said, these people have moved here. They're posting all these videos about their move here. And I know of at least one pedo within a half a mile of me here. And we do not have a registry here to show you who is. But it's a small town environment. Everybody knows everybody else. Everybody knows everyone's secrets. So it's not super hard to find out who the pedos are or who's weird. It just is not. I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. I lived out in rural Virginia, just beyond Warrenton, Virginia. We bought a house there and we stayed in it for 30 years before we moved out. My husband retired from the federal government. He made that drive every day. So we lived there, and it was good. I would have stayed in my house forever. I loved my little cottage home. But my husband had always wanted to move here, and he twisted my arm, and I finally agreed. And it's so much cheaper here. Everything's so much better. We have this house here, this lovely house, sitting on a couple of acres. We've got a guest house. We got a pool. We got a hot tub. We paid less than a third of what we got for our house in Northern Virginia for this whole place. Oh, yeah, family in Alexandria. It's a nice area. The parents are oblivious. Exactly. We've lived here three of the high-priced first-class tickets so that they could have extra bags. Okay, that is a benefit. When I came here, I almost did that because at that time, Aeromexico was offering a ticket to Costa Rica at a discount on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where the first class ticket was not a whole lot higher than the regular change. Flying has changed a tremendous amount since the pandemic has started. And on all their flights, they showed they were fighting with flight attendants about the number of bags they were carrying on. Oh my goodness. Debbie, that is scary. Oh, that is really scary. That is super scary that he would be talking to them. It's dry season right now. The reptiles are crawling out, and we have a 5 foot long, beautiful iguana that lives in our yard. We see him all the time, eating all the stuff, chasing the other iguanas off. He is wonderful, except for one thing. Iguanas like flat ground to go to the bathroom. So a lot of times he'll get on our pool deck and go. And because he's 5 foot long, it's like a grown man squatting down on there and going. And the other day he was up in the strangler fig tree about 30 feet up, and he went and it fell into the pool. It was like it's not hallelujah, it's raining men. It's like, ugh, it's raining feces. That was like one of those moments. I just slapped myself in the head. I think that Derek will want to use, he's actually said something. He's talked about using his law skills to bring suit against Jim Bob and to do other stuff. He's talked about that. I think that would be a good thing. Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you, I know iguanas are everywhere in South Florida. I've seen that myself. Crazy. So back to Costa Rica. So they moved here 4 days and they think they're experts. They said that about first class. You can do that if you want, but first class tickets are crazy expensive. It's only like $50 for a suitcase you're bringing, and then $100 at some point. And I tell people it's like, it's cheaper for you to pay all that and bring all of your suitcases and your boxes of the few things you'll need to get started at $50 or $100 a suitcase or box or whatever, than it is to, guess what, have it shipped over. Shipping is outrageous to get here, and the whole shipping thing here is corrupt as hell. I only know one person that got all their stuff here and nothing was missing and everything came through just fine. And they didn't try to jack them on the taxes. Now, I've heard and seen evidence that they changed the laws on shipping everything down here now, that if you have applied to be a resident, you're allowed to ship your household goods down tax-free. But I have to see that to believe it, because I know how it is here in Costa Rica. They're saying that about cars too now. Hey, Prairie, I'm just babbling about these crazy folks I saw online that moved to my community and is trying to pretend to be experts all of a sudden. And they're exploiting their children in their videos too. The McMoversons. I may link to them below. I may not. I'm still just kind of ranting about their video where they're giving out all the wrong information about moving to Costa Rica. They moved here to the Tamarindo area where we live, and they got off the plane. They finally got here, and they were talking about how wonderful all of the guys that grab your bags. And here, I got to give you a little piece of advice. If you come to Liberia and you fly into the Liberia airport, there are guys that are lurking right outside where you come out, right there in the building, that if you are not careful, they will grab your bags and put them on their cart and get out to the parking lot, and then they're wanting a 2020. Okay. Don't fall for that. I mean, if you want them to carry your bags, you've got that much crap, it might be worth a 20. But for like me, when I'm coming back and forth frequently, I'm calling, no, get away. She was ranting about how wonderful that was. They took a turismo van. A turismo van is something that most tourists here will take when they first arrive. And it's a good way to get from point A to point B. It's just is not the most cost-effective way to do it. It's a rather expensive, expensive way to get to Tamarindo. So she was talking about their friend owns this van. And I'm looking on the side going, that's a Turismo bus. I'm sure you paid at least $100 a head to that dude to tote you and your luggage to Tamarindo. my new friend who might send me, oh gosh, a $70 video. Oh my goodness, Amanda, that is wild. I mean, Debbie, Amanda, yeah, I think that's why I went to I think that's why I became a lawyer. I really do, because he saw how badly his wife and the others were getting exploited. So now we have these people making these videos and using their kids, and the kids were just acting pretty bratty on the video. I got to say it. I would not let my children touch every piece of luggage coming off the thing. I wouldn't brag about how they let me through customs first because I'm a first class passenger. You know what that gets you here in Costa Rica? Robbed. I'm just going to come out and say it. If you come here and you act like you're a rich gringo, the Gringo Shuffle happens. And she was praising this guy with the van. I'm thinking, oh, girl, Gringo Shuffle. She was talking about how everyone in Costa Rica was the nicest on earth and how she spent time in Mexico where they're ripping you off left and right. Girlfriend, Gringo Shuffle. I'm not saying this in an ugly, nasty way. Costa Ricans are very nice people. But when they see Americans or Canadians who are acting a certain way, the dollar signs will pop into their eyes and they will try to get the maximum they can in certain places, like the airport. The airport, you just have to use some common sense. Common sense. And they, for what they paid for that ride to Tamarindo, they could have rented a car for a month. Oh, so when I see these things, when these people are doing these really foolish things and they're promoting this as the way to go, all it does is make me want to finish my book, which I had to stop because Costa Rica is in such turmoil because of COVID and it's still not settled. It makes me want to do more and more videos about Costa Rica. Where I am tonight, I'm hating on everybody who is using their kids in videos or on television shows or any of that. I want kids to be able to have childhoods. I want those long kids. I mean, Sophie and her brothers to have the opportunity to have healthy, productive, happy childhoods. Not what they've been thrown through so far, not what they've lived through. You know, I know what Sophie has lived through. That was me, but it wasn't a member of the family. It was the family dentist that was doing it to me from 7 to 9. I didn't have the relationship with my parents that Sophie had with her father that would have led me to tell my mother. Plus, I didn't have those words for that because this is back in the Mesozoic era when I was a kid. And that happened on the pork chili. He had to bathe in tomato sauce. Debbie, that's actually not a bad way to do it. I've had cats that have gotten squirted with tomato juice. I called my vet one time and he said, well, I can de-skunk him for you. It's going to cost you $100. I can sell you I can sell you the shampoo. It's going to cost you $25. But if I were you, I would go get a couple of cans of tomato juice and rub him down with it, which is exactly what I did every time my cats got skunked. You get a vat of tomato juice, you get a washcloth and a comb, and you just start rubbing them and combing them with it. And guess what? It kills it dead. The smell fades quickly. So there's parchment. Gringo Shuffle. Yes, I call it the Gringo Shuffle whenever I see Costa Ricans trying to get maximum money out of a rich American. And I'm going to be real frank with you. Every American, even the poor ones, are rich Americans to the Costa Ricans. And the Costa Ricans are really wonderful, nonviolent, family-oriented people. You've got a couple of bad actors, though, that will rob you if you're flashing cash or you're acting like an entitled rich gringo. And we've had some really funny things happen here. We had a case where a guy showed up in his 30s to have a vacation here and just wouldn't leave. And he was hanging out with drug dealers and prostitutes. And his family was contacting the State Department demanding they find their missing son. Their missing son was hanging out with hookers and drug dealers at one of the big hotels here in Tampa. And it really turned very funny because the police showed up, the policia, which they don't do a whole lot here. And he went on the run with his hookers and blow and dealers. And at one point, he was so high that the cops caught up with him and he jumped into the glass recycling bin naked, high and naked in the glass recycling bin, doing like this with his arms and legs and cut himself up all over. So they had to pull his naked, bleeding self out of the recycle bin and take him to the hospital. They took him to Liberia, close to Liberia, to the, I think it was a SEMA hospital. I'm not sure if that was the name or not, but I think so. It's the one I don't use because they don't take my insurance. And he jumped out of the window and ran away in a hospital gown. And eventually they grabbed him up and frog marched him to the plane, put him on the plane, put him home. He told his family that he had been robbed and that those people were not his friends. He wasn't hanging around with hookers and dealers, and he wasn't doing blow, and he wasn't trying to run for the cops, and blah, blah, blah. So he, bad that I tried to swim in a vat of glass. So they did finally send him back, and he told his family this tale about, oh no, he'd been kidnapped by these dealers, these hookers, and he was trying to get away from them and have the police put him on the plane, and he had done none of that. So his family went nuts and went on Fox News and were demanding an investigation, the whole 9 yards, and the police released a statement, which was pretty funny because it goes with the story I'm telling you now, with him running off and jumping out of windows and running off naked, swimming in glass and stuff. So I will say this, it's never a dull moment here. Always something crazy happening. You can sit back and laugh. You can point at the gringos and laugh. And I know that's hypocritical of me because I'm kind of gringo, but I don't do stupid stuff. I try not to do stupid stuff here. I always say, please. I say, thank you. I don't march in the hotel and demand they turn off the wind. I don't run around and get an $80, $100 ride in a van and say, oh, this is my friend Jose. I know better than that. I know I can get the bus for $2 from in front of that same airport to block from here. I know that I can rent a car for $50. And so that is the thing that amuses me about here. We have people that try to move here and try to say, oh, what did they do, Debbie? They move here and they try to say, I know all about it now. I've been here 4 days. I've been here a week, a month, whatever. And I'm like, you haven't even gotten to the doldrums yet. If you know anything about sailing, the doldrums is the part of the sea where there's no wind and you're kind of sitting there going, okay, what now? What the hell? What the hell? So many people I know have moved here and cannot adjust to the culture. And at the 2-year mark, they're in the doldrums and they leave. They say, no, I'm done. If you can push past the doldrums, you can have a wonderful life here for a fraction of what it costs in the States. You could have your circle of wonderful ticos that you hang out with and that you hire to do things that aren't going to try to gouge you, unlike the Tico Shuffle guys. Like there's a plumber here in town that advertises with huge garish signs who does the Gringo Shuffle. He gets all the money from the rich gringos. Oh, so Amanda, that is wild. Yeah. That is wild. I've had some wild times in my life. Do it during his campaigns. Oh, wow. Yeah. So a lot of times when there's things like this happen, there's some kind of intoxicants involved, be it drugs or alcohol or whatever. And it's kind of funny because they're pretty open with selling the drugs here, and the police here just turn a blind eye to it. Just makes me laugh. So much of here just makes me laugh. Today we went to the Do It Center. If you move here and you're in this part of the world, you have to know about the Do It Center. It's this giant warehouse. It's full of the top with crap from the States. And you never know what you're going to get. You never know you're going to walk in there and you're going to get the parts for your Rayovac flashlight or whatever. Today I walked in there and I got a bird feeder. I've never seen bird feeders anywhere in Costa Rica, and I do feed the birds here. Don't turn me in. It's against the law here. Debbie, there is no excuse for not getting the jab here. They will deport you. Homeschool, or what I call the yoga granola heads that are going to homeschool. Homeschooling is illegal here. Not being fully vaccinated against communicable diseases is 100% illegal here. And when I see Americans, Canadians, whatever come here and say, I'm going to homeschool and I don't believe in vaccinations, it's like, see ya. I know they're going to pick you up and they're going to say you have a week to vaccinate your children and enroll them in the local schools, or you must leave our country. And if you're a resident and you're doing this, CPS here will take your children and you won't get them back until you agree. CNN suggested no food if you refuse to get jabbed. That's not quite. They're overlooked, Amanda. They're illegal here. Even though they are talking about having medical marijuana, which would be good for me because I had medical marijuana from my specialist at Johns Hopkins. I had a prescription, and it was very helpful with the asthma. Here, I got to sneak around and buy it like everybody else. Or I have to go to the Thursday night market, the farmer's market, where the nice little old lady who has gray hair like me sells weed brownies openly, and nobody ever tries to bust her for them. So I get my weed brownies there and chop them up and have a little 16th when I'm having bad asthma days and think, well, as long as I don't look in my freezer, I'm okay. You got your booster? I haven't had my booster, but I haven't been vaccinated that long. My final vaccination was in July. I got the J&J. And the next time I go back to the States, I'm getting the booster. I understand a lot of people want to make the decision for themselves not to get vaccinated. I agree we all have to have freedoms, but I don't know exactly. The man was grown and he had like 4 computers in his bedroom. They actually managed to trace who this was that was doing this, because it's sometimes rather hard to get it done. And were you able to expose him during his campaign? I mean, I would have. That's just me. And of course, I went on that show to argue and say, hey, guess what? That was just retarded the way they handled it in our town. I shouldn't even say that word. I keep forgetting. I'm old. The man was a groomer, no doubt. It sounds like it. It sounds like it. And that's the awful thing about a lot of the pedos is they have such extreme grooming skills. They zero in on these kids that are maybe in not great home situations like Sophie Long. And because I don't know a whole lot about what happened with the stepfather boyfriend, but I'm assuming he did some grooming before it actually happened. I'm sorry. I'm just jumping around like a frog on a hot griddle tonight. I'm not good at night, and I've said that before. Oh, the guy was talking to Debbie's 7-year-old. Yes, yes. They target vulnerable children. They do. They look for the ones where they know the parents aren't maybe watching as closely, or there's other things going on with the families, like there's maybe substance abuse problems or custody issues. The next thing you know, they're in the door. I'm lucky that my kids came up when they did, because it wasn't quite as big of a thing as it is now. My husband used to love to watch a show on NBC. This I forgot what that was even called. Chris Hansen. Chris Hansen, and he was on Dateline, To Catch a Predator. That was it. Congress is using PlayStation, the deep state, to get messages to each other because they can't use cell phones. Hillary ordered burner phones. I don't believe that, Debbie. I don't believe that one bit. And I lived in the DC area. I saw how things worked. It's not at all how things work there. It never was. Oh, I'm sure they are. The Duggars usually have, the Duggars always say that People magazine is the Duggar mouthpiece, the official Duggar mouthpiece. I'm just not one for conspiracy theories on the government because I seen up close how you can't get anybody in DC to is secret, even slight. I mean, we took a taxi ride one time from Union Station to the Nationals Park, and the taxi driver was spilling on everybody in Congress. It was actually pretty funny. Some of it I'd heard before. But so many things, there's so many things that are said and done in DC that never make it out in the public. I will say that. And these conspiracy theories I'm having, they're not even remotely possible in DC with the way things work. Oh, David Cassidy. And Levi, same thing. I had messengers through, do you remember ICQ? Probably don't. That's how far back I go. ICQ messenger system. And some of the messages were pretty horrible. And when they started being able to send you photos, it was even worse. My husband still loves it. He'll look them up. Sometimes he'll go on binge and he'll be watching them all on YouTube. And I will hear him, I'm Chris Hansen, and start laughing. They're on their way to do a covert and he got sprayed. That's pretty crazy. So anyway, I've totally lost my yeah. So ICQ, I used to get those stupid things. So many dick pics, so horrible. You know, I actually had a picture. I had somebody make me up in those days because I did not know how to do Photoshop. And I still kind of suck at it, so I don't fool with it. He took a picture of my head and my hair and put it on the body of a 500-pound naked fat man. And whenever I would have one of these creeps show up with their dick pics and want a picture of me, I'd send that thing right on out. It was a horrible, horrible picture. And the other one I had was my head on Lee Harvey Oswald's body, the famous picture where he's got his Mannlicher Carcano rifle in one hand and the communist pamphlets in the other. So I just never suffered these fools. And I'm about ready to start doing the Nigerian scam baiting again. I enjoyed it with the romance scammers. I'm going to have to learn how to do StreamYard just so I can show you guys the ridiculous stuff they're saying and the even more ridiculous stuff I'm saying back. If I can make them at the end of an hour conversation say, you are one sick woman, I've done my job. I've tied them up for a while. Used to be you could tie them up for months, but the way that Facebook squashes them and Twitter does routinely now, you might be able to get an hour's worth of fun out of them before they're disappearing. I did a ton of those videos when I first came on, like last year. He was found guilty, yes. So, yes, Emily, I'm going to have to do those again because I miss them. My husband was like, why are you doing this? You're lying. And so I stopped doing them, but I miss it too much. Well, I got my Nikes on. I got my roll of quarters in my pocket. I'm waiting for the spaceship behind the comet. And you just get them going. And if you can suck them in to talk to you, if you can tell them a weird story, they're definitely hooked. And if I can push them off the romance scammer stuff, because I find that thing repulsive, when they show up and say, oh, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and they start asking you when you're going to retire. So, yeah, that's going to happen again, I think. I'm going to have to start accepting the friend requests again rather than just squashing them like bugs when they show up. Like how much fun that you can have with the Nigerians. Years ago, when I used to do the scam baiting the guys via email, that was a hoot. But they were a lot less sophisticated than some of the romance scammers. So, and they have a better command of English now, the romance scammers. So you can't just throw ridiculous terms out and expect them to fall for it, because they won't. They will go ahead and say, "Why are you talking about this?" So if I can make them think I'm crazy and run away, that's the most fun ever. But I did learn one thing when I was doing that. I should go. It's been an hour now and I've been raving. One thing I learned, don't ever ask them what they're wearing, because they will say something dirty. And you might even get a dick pic or two out of it. Yeah, they're getting old. They are retiring. I'm not surprised that Chris Cuomo was going, because look at his intertwinement with his brother on CNN. I always thought that was kind of squishy and not good journalism at all. It's what I call without a box of Kleenex journalism. Amanda, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm just ranting and raving and telling all my crazy Costa Rican stories. And like I said, I'm going to be watching the McMover Sons, and I'm going to be keeping my eyeballs peeled when I go to the Auto Mercado, which is the fancy grocery store, which I already keep my eyes peeled anyway. I like to spot Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. He lives here now, and I see him every now and then, but I don't run up and go, you're that guy. Because it's kind of tacky, but I do giggle every time I see him. Well, good. I'm glad you've laughed. I'm glad you've laughed. I'm glad you like my stories about Costa Rica, these crazy ones. And it's funny because it is wonderful living here, but the getting here and the getting used to things here is a little hairy sometimes, which is what I'm writing about in my book. I don't know if anybody's ever read the book by a lady named Nadine. I wish I could think of her last name. The book was called Happier Than a Billionaire. She wrote about her own journey moving to Costa Rica. And sadly, she's back in the States now. I think she just got broken by the system here. She bought a huge piece of property in Brasilito. Well, not Brasilito. Where did she buy that property? Let's see. Where is that? North of Flamingo. That's all I remember now. Between Playa Donta and Flamingo. She bought a big piece of property, high rent area, very expensive pieces of property, $1 zillion lots on the ocean. She bought one and then discovered after she bought it, she didn't have water rights. It's like somebody I know here that bought a bunch of acres, a big acre piece on the side of a mountain overlooking the ocean. Millions of dollars spent. You can't get internet. There's no internet out there. There's no public utilities. He's stuck. Oh, Don Lemon is another one that's rather bizarre. I'm going to tell you a little story before I go about Don Lemon. Don Lemon grew up in Baker, Louisiana. I spent part of my growing up years in Baker, Louisiana, just north of Baton Rouge. It's a pretty horrible place. I'm just going to come around and say it. I didn't like it as a kid. I was there from the time I was 5 until like 11 or so. We finally moved. Thank goodness. And we went back and forth, my mom and I was in Baker off and on until I was a freshman in high school. A very little, small southern town where everybody minded everybody else's business. My mother was notorious for having divorced my father. It was a very racist little town. Now, I don't know, it may have improved. It may be better now. Don Lemon is only 6 years younger than I am. We both went to the same high school. We both went to the same private schools. And guess what? He wrote his book about racism, and I was shocked because he didn't reference Baker at all. And apparently, His father being an attorney in Baton Rouge and some of the places that he went to school, he was largely protected. He was speaking from a position of privilege that a lot of people don't have in Baker. And I was really shocked by his lack of all talking about the racism endemic in Baker and in Baton Rouge. When I was busting my hump working 10,000 jobs to get my degree at LSU, he was pledging a fraternity. So I just don't have any sympathy for his, quote, journey, because his journey out of Baton Rouge and Baker was a very different one than most people coming out of there. It was rather entitled. So whenever he talks about racism, I have a real hard time believing him or paying attention, because it's like, dude, I know where you came from. I know that you were the class president at Baker High. My mother moved us all around. Baker, Baton Rouge. I went to college. I went to school for a while in Clinton. I mean, my family's from Ponchatoula. Does that tell you something? Baton Rouge, I actually graduated from Woodlawn High on off of Jefferson and I want to say Old Jonestown Road, but I know it's not it. I blocked a lot of that out. It was not a good thing. Yeah, I'm from Louisiana. I am from Louisiana. And I don't always admit that. I left Louisiana right after I got married, and I've stayed away. Bogalusa, very familiar with Bogalusa. My mother worked at Crown Zellerback for some years. I'm really going to date her, including going back and forth to their place at Bogalusa sometimes from St. Francisville. Oh, wow. I know where you're at then if you're 30 miles from Louisiana and 50, 60 miles from Texas. You're not far from where my friend Cindy Kunzman worked for some years, because she and I have talked a great deal about her years in Shreveport and just laughed over them. That's like a whole different country. Yeah, they did. They did. Where in South Florida did you live? I didn't live in South Florida. I have a lot of friends in South Florida. We used to visit South Florida. My family always had a beach house in near Destin, and one in Orange Beach, Alabama. So I didn't actually live in South Florida. Spent a lot of time in Florida. Always wanted to live there. Always wanted to live there. A very small world. And I run into people from Louisiana all over the place, left and right. And it was kind of funny when Anne Rice the other day died and they were talking about her arrangements. So I was like, oh, they're burying her at the Metairie Cemetery. She wouldn't like that much, I don't think. And just a small world, a small world. And I'm thinking about doing Louisiana history, because one thing I've been doing recently, I've been doing a lot of research on Jack's Brewery there in the French Quarter, because my grandfather was a pipe fitter there for his entire life, pretty much, for many years at the brewery. He worked there. He's told me all kinds of tales of the brewery, and there's not a whole lot of history available anywhere. And there's even like a little teeny tiny museum there. I live on the good side of town, and we don't smell the mill. All I can say is an hour north of Miami, it's like Jurassic Park. Oh, I have friends that live in the Fort Lauderdale area that I go visit on a regular basis. So yeah, there's that. I'm some familiar with that part of the world too. But it's kind of funny in Baton Rouge, so many chemical plants and paper mills and Exxon and everything else. And we used to say on a good day, you could smell the paper mill forever, because you could actually smell the paper mills way north of town when the wind blew right. So there's that. Well, now I know why Michelle, in one episode, she told they were not allowed to sit in the boys' lap. Yep, that's why, because of Josh. Okay, you guys, I'm rambling. I'm demented. It's been one of those days where I've just done everything under the sun. I need to go lay down. Homeschooling except for the Duggars. Oh, yes. Lazy mom. Franklinton. Oh my goodness. I used to play in a band and we did a prom in Franklinton one time. That was kind of funny. So, um, Lazy mom, I'm sorry for you if you had to go in that homeschooling group. My old Quiverful church was heavily involved with homeschooling, and we actually knew of the Duggars before they ever had a show because they were kind of Quiverful, well known even then. I am punch drunk. I'm tired, punch drunk. And paper mills are the worst smell ever, Amanda. Do you know when I go to Louisiana to visit my poor mama, I have to just push the asthma meds the entire time I'm there because I immediately get sick. And I grew up with that nonsense. Oh, yeah, that's true. They make that gator feed. They do. Yeah. So I'm actually thinking about making a trip down to Louisiana here eventually. And if we do, we're gonna have to have a let's get together and have a pile of drinks meeting at some point. Okay, you guys, I'm punch drunk. I'm going to bed now. If I can ever recover from my coffee flakes. Have a good evening.